Are you thinking of getting chickens for eggs because eggs are so expensive right now? Well, this video today is all about chickens and eggs. It's going to help you answer how many chickens do you need to get, what kind of breed should they be, and the most important question of all, how many eggs can you expect to get? It helps to understand the process by which a hen lays eggs. So to lay an egg takes 26 hours. And a yolk is released inside the hen to form the next egg once the previous egg has been laid. So the egg is laid, a yolk is released inside the hen, and then that yolk begins its journey through the chicken to get the egg white put on, to have the shell put on, and then to be laid again about 26 hours later. So 26 hours is longer than 24 hours, which is a day. So each day the chicken is going to lay 2 hours roughly later than the day before, until eventually it gets too late in the day when she lays that egg for it to trigger the ovulation of another yolk. So she's going to skip a day, maybe two, maybe more than 2 days if she's getting a bit older or isn't a super great laying breed. But that kind of helps you to understand that you're not going to get an egg every single day from your hen. So that is not an expectation you can have. In the first season and probably the second season of laying for a breed of chicken that is designed for being an egg-laying breed, you can expect to get 5 to 6 eggs a week from each hen that you have. 3 laying breed hens will give you between 15 and 18 eggs a week when they're in their first and second laying season. So that's a great point to start figuring out how many eggs you need in a week and how many chickens you're going to need to meet that need. But there are a whole bunch of other factors that influence how many eggs your hens are going to lay, and we're going to jump into those factors right now. The most important factor when we're talking total number of eggs laid over the egg-laying lifespan of your hens is what breed they are. Because not all breeds lay at the same rate. Some breeds are way, way better at laying than others. So picking a laying type breed is going to give you more eggs over sort of the same period of time as a dual purpose or a not laying breed of hen. So laying breeds of hens are like your commercial hybrids, the red stars, things like that. Here we call them brown shavers or highline browns. And also breeds like leghorns or Minorcas. Often the Mediterranean type breeds will be really good egg layers, although generally speaking, not any egg laying breed is going to match the abilities of the hybrid egg layers in the egg laying department. But all of those lighter framed, bred for laying breeds are going to perform better than a heavier dual purpose breed. Now, I pretty much only have dual purpose hens in my flock. I really like them, but they do not lay as many eggs as a bred for laying breed. So do your research before you're deciding. Don't just pick based on looks or a cool name. Think about why you're getting the chickens, and if it is just for laying, if that's your only reason, then pick a breed that is known for laying lots of eggs. The age of your hens does matter. Like I mentioned just a little earlier, chickens lay the most eggs during their first and second laying season. So when they're about 6 to 8 months old, they're going to start laying, and that's their first season. Then they're going to molt, which we're going to talk about in just a moment, and then they're going to begin their second laying season. So during those 2 sort of years, roughly 2.5 years, they are going to lay pretty much 5 or 6 eggs a day for that whole period, except for when they're taking a little break. Now, as they get older, when they're 3 years old, 4 years old, 5 years old, they're going to lay less eggs. So they might only lay 3 or 2 eggs a week. And again, Some breeds keep going longer than others, and once you get to that year 3 and beyond stage, the actual breed of the chicken starts to matter a little bit less, because my dual purpose hens, they will keep going and actually lay better than the same age of my actual egg laying breed hens. And I'm not sure why that is. I think it's because the hens that like to lay lots of eggs, they've been bred for that, lay so many in their first 2 seasons that they just don't have that many left. But the dual purpose, who have laid at a much slower rate, can just keep on going. But they all do decrease the number of eggs that they're going to lay as they get older, and at a certain point they're not going to lay any at all, or they might lay for 2 or 3 weeks in the springtime and then stop and not lay again for the whole year. So age is a huge factor in how many eggs you're going to get from your flock. And if you're just focused on eggs, then you do need to only keep your chickens for sort of a maximum of 3 years before you need to get replacements if you're targeting a constant, consistent egg production. Chickens don't lay eggs all year round at the same rate. Eggs are a seasonal food. Now, a breed that has been bred to lay eggs is going to be less affected by season than some other more heritagey breeds, but there is still seasons to eggs. So, chickens need at least 14 hours of daylight to trigger the hormones that is going to keep them laying eggs. So if you have less than 14 hours of daylight, so in the winter time when you might only have 12 hours or 10 hours of daylight, they are going to start to shut up shop in the egg laying department. That is the reason why commercial egg farms will have lights on where they keep their hens, so that they can keep the daylight above 14 hours a day. You can put lights in your own coop at home. I personally don't like doing that. I like to let the chickens have their sort of natural rest from laying to recuperate and be ready to lay again in the springtime. So a sort of a natural pattern of laying eggs is that your chickens will lay a whole bunch of eggs in the springtime, slow down through the summer as it gets hot, because chickens absolutely hate getting too hot. They'll lay again more thoroughly in the autumn, and then they will shut down into the winter and potentially not lay any eggs at all, or maybe only lay quite infrequently. Every year chickens molt, and what that means is that they shed their feathers and grow new feathers. And the first molt that a chicken will have signals sort of the end of her first season, and depending on what time of year she was hatched, that will occur at a different age, because it's influenced by the season, by the amount of light and by the temperature. So in her first season, a hen might not molt until she is like 18 months old, but once she's had her first molt, she is going to do that every single year. And while she is molting, she is very unlikely to lay eggs. If she does keep laying eggs, she's probably not going to lay as many as she would if she wasn't molting. And this is a time that it's important to support your hens to regrow their feathers and to be happy, because it's very stressful on the body to be losing all of those feathers and having to regrow them again, because feathers are made out of protein. They need energy to do all of that. So it's important to feed your chickens really well while that's happening, which can be a bit tricky, because I find with my flock that when they're molting, they're a lot less interested in eating their feed in the first place. So that's going to take us through to talking quickly about nutrition, because it's very, very important that you feed your flock well so that they can lay eggs. Eggs require energy and protein to produce, and calcium for their shell, so it is important that your chickens have a high quality diet. And I have done a whole series on nutrition that you can check out. We're not going to go into all of that here in this video, but it is important that they have what they need, otherwise they're not going to be able to lay to their full potential. Having a flock of chickens for eggs is a bit of time. It takes time and money and effort goes into producing your wonderful eggs, so they're quite valuable to you. So what do you do to preserve them, to store them optimally, so you're not going to end up wasting eggs because they've gone bad before you can get to them? Well, there are a few things to consider when storing eggs. Now, I don't do long-term storage of eggs. I don't do things like pickling or water glassing eggs. That is something you can look into if you really want to keep your eggs fresh for a really long time, but I don't need to do that because I have so many chickens here that even in the middle of winter, I at least have some eggs coming through for fresh eggs. But it is important to think about the factors around storing your eggs well. The first step in storing your eggs is do not wash them unless they're really super gross, in which case wash that one egg or two eggs that are gross and keep them slightly separate so you can use them first. But generally speaking, collect your eggs, do not wash them because eggs have a bloom around the outside of them that helps to keep them fresh. It helps to keep bacteria from entering the egg so that they're going to stay fresher for longer. So first of all, don't wash your eggs. They're perfectly sanitary. You're not going to be eating the shell. Totally fine. Don't wash your eggs. The second thing you need to decide is, are you going to store your eggs in the refrigerator or not in the refrigerator? Now, both options are totally valid. You can do either choice. But if you're going to put your eggs into the refrigerator, they must stay in the refrigerator. You can't change your mind, bring them out, leave them on the counter, because if you're taking your eggs in and out of a cold space to room temperature, you are going to be constantly changing their temperature and causing condensation to form on them, which starts to break down the protection of that bloom around the egg, and just changing the temperature of something constantly is not good for it. So decide which one you're going to do and stick with it. You can take them from room temperature storage and put them in the fridge if you change your mind, or you're starting to pile up some eggs and you're thinking, oh, some of these need to go in the fridge. You can do it in that direction, but do not take them from the fridge to the counter. So if you're storing your eggs in the fridge, and in the fridge they will last longer. That's definitely true. So if you're getting a lot and you have the space, keeping them in the fridge will keep them fresher for longer, but it's not necessary. If you're going through your eggs quite quickly, they're perfectly safe to leave out. But you need to be a bit sensible about that. If you're living in a very hot climate, you might want to definitely keep them in the fridge. Here in New Zealand, the climate is pretty temperate. I can leave them out all year round. It's not a problem, but if I do have a stack building up, I will pop them in the fridge just to hold them a bit longer. So if they're in the fridge and you want to use a couple, take out just the number that you're going to use, leave the rest in the fridge. And the last thing to think about when storing your eggs is which way up do you store them? So there is a right answer to this question. When you store your eggs, you want to store them pointy side down. So big side up, pointy side down in your egg carton or whatever it is that you're using to store your eggs. If you have one of those sort of egg skelter systems that store them on their side, that's okay, but I would just keep your eggs that you're going to be constantly using on that one. If your eggs are going to be sitting for any sort of length of time, store them pointy side down, big side up. And the reason for that is because at the big end of the egg, there is an air cell inside. So when you store them with the pointy end down, big end up, the air cell is at the top. If you store them with the big side down, pointy end up, the air cell is going to want to lift in the egg. And as the egg ages, the little connections that keep the egg yolk centered inside the egg start to weaken. The egg is still okay, it's still fresh and fine as it starts to age a bit, but the air cell will get bigger as the egg gets older, which is why the egg float test works for telling how old an egg is. But the air cell will start to expand and push into the yolk, and that can decenter it. It can cause it to stick to the side of the egg on the inside, and all of these things are going to contribute to the egg starting to go bad. So we want to store the egg this way, pointy end down, and that's going to give it the best chance of lasting as long as possible on your shelf. hopefully this video has given you all the information you need as a starting point for going out and getting your own chicken so you can pick the number of chickens that you need to consistently have eggs for your family. If you have any questions about what I've talked about here today, I would love to hear about them in the comments.